humi yanhwe nsama obidi no mu akotene bia imprepreja ye kese nsodafo wono recruitment a wore ye no oye ewak agoframando wa nkranan ayawo sama esin yimpe basa ahwe wono nkwa wo edoma webunkam ebudo no wo nkran yaboko oye amenfi west abatom posodo eho na wode abotugoro nkofo wie kokoko pa nti wama ekwafo no wonwa abrede obiara obuso no munadi wonfo won onfa nchen yaboko na yakohwe nsama ote dam no so University of Cape Coast UCC waye oye nchacha sonko da ama mpanyimfa wode ekwadwuma ano de wonhwe na wonfa abefo technology wonfa mu ekwafo na wonfa ehun edwuma ebusafo yi na nsemi oka na nwabere mede bosom de Coastal Television don kore kasebo asede pepe bi wo no yadeba ma oye design gift shop eno onye NPA National Petroleum Authority osi yusu gas edwumakwe wona dawo ma na we somasen ma mede don kore kasebo Coastal Television mede bra homi eba from kitikeku ASORBA KOFI ESSUMAN afi yanje be na yanje nsama nemu ntechirem nsama sese rempempenya Coastal Television nsaka wo oye enkran 37 military hospital so dafo wona aya sabia wabra omampenchantwa mani mahama oti asama anepei osi oye Ewak Stadium no odneyi kobo enyi kam hwe da orokodo 37 military hospital there another watson oye no kwara na de nyimpa debien na wahwe won kona semi no ya hobosam na nchechiremanye de ende ya dasonkwa military another nsudafo no wetese wo da wolofa oye edwumayafo we ye recruitment na ta wo fa foforofo na wabaye nsudafo na ono numu no wachem enkran na onye igwai ebusua na doma we bunkam oye Ewak Stadium no ono no wakafa dam ahwiwi daba ma akaba de metete nti wuso mu timkeja impe basan wahwe won kona bra amampayin kupe mu oye 37 minute hospital na ofu openu no de wodin sem tugwa no wochem no oye no kwada yimpa de bien ana onye no kwada yimpa de bien na so dafo mu payin ochechire bo nchirem de onye nyimpa de bien na work de mum oye impesia na wahwe won ko yinte nsama obo nchirem ana na nchechirem okay.
As to what exactly happened, the president went in the ward and he has come out. So let's listen to him.
Abraham Pabia, I need to just get something straight. There's an erroneous information going out. The casualties we have that came through were 28 in number. Those who are dead are 6 and not 12. Those who are critical and in ICU are 5. We have 12 who are fairly critical. The rest are stable. Thank you.
It's in Canada, we don't want the papa name Yimpesian, what the Impa Eduna watch 28, and I wasn't want to cry. No more day benedi, baby, I would you know, quantum, Nayampa, but one son fee more. One ceremony fee into that AC war or 37 minutes hospital on the man pay a domo boom commodore or and so for Ewak Stadium. Well, Coder, well, con one phone, no jumo. It was Yantiado na Yankajina or I mean, through West, a battle impossible. A ho na I was some and I almost summer or coordinate in paying far what da a quaffo was the Atuga actually there. Eyufubi asasiri wewe koko na nokwari wohuda wanka na wohuda wonye nti woloto tefre bayimbom ana woloto won nsonkopa woda mahona wa asase wewe koko ne da wunyai na koko ubogu apado binu nsupo woto na abana koko ne sika wo mun yesika ba na sado tafeti koko so no wadwuma ye opa nti obaye wo de kobnande bisinayi na ababanda ebi betiru koko pie na no we du ase wakato nti yene kateba ka kwabna kwa onye ekwafa wowo oye wasa amenfi meche aguna camp oyun bon kobon nsama former assembly member ewe Daniel Kwachi odoto nsamchoyin kwabena akwananyim yenhwe bi
for ye ni abrepa koko adwuma na edin ye brepa ye koko na sisi akoko nso abasika enti wo a wonim na obi wie koko no yeso ye nya ye ni abre ye bechi wotu koko na bi wia na paso ebi su wia nnua ho etiti e de sem fanshema fom o mo titi gum o mo titi koko no de ko so ye be ma police for aso ati me kan kire kuya fo ni nyina se o mo yiro mo ho adwuma de no a na ye ni abre ye so ye be ye adwuma no a na wo so a wo mpe bra wo be hire so obi wi koko no ye ti wa ye so enim kan
koko sisi atene sisi koko krono koko wia ekoso wo miamia ye ewo ankrankro emfum ene wo mu pempen so bia enye nipa bia ono na ye fuura enye ono ne dua koko no na so na se koko aban da roma koko ababo nti koko aye ni bre ama ankrankro nti o mu nam krofon fum o maboye o mu fum ede fa koko esisa koko eti koko enti se nipa no ye pese ka trom se wanya ya koko ne yaban dia koko eda ho no koko fu koko bia eto bia no yaban dia enti se wo bia wo bo sa kro no na se wo sa suban mu no se wanya ya emra wo ho kwan se de aba wo ho kwan se de wonu di se de mra de esitie de we kan se empenefo se uti ekurafo no na utu mama no so de efo enti se wo hwe wo wade ya enti ekurafo no omommo modran se de bia no omommo wom koko no ho ban because koko no ekurafo japade na obeti koko bi obeburu koko na won sra koko no emra obeti se bia nansa na nan bia se otu koko no bo modran se oni be de ebekọ ho na obeti koko na de e de aba because koko no e wo japade na wan sra koko no wa mo ho ban na se obi kofa wonu aye de wa hiro japade ntimi dem futu ana se de meka che mi na nanu nua no mekurafo nyina se omommo omani koko no omufuo so ni koko aba no matie no a mu buru a e de obehata no menya koko ska no omommo ni e de enko ho
nti obiara so nara onhwe na so na de ye emon yo kwa wonam wa no so oyedin ma ewifo de obowia ebusia ye de wara ye wo oye ekwayem na UCC University of Cape Coast we gina wonutum do na wode nchekire wode ama agriculture extension officers a wode da oye mensin na ana worhwe de uboboa mande abefo technology ekwafa we ekwadwuma no wetum na wode dam oye nda abef technology wude wure ekwadwumam ama akabande enka no adobe bebi a wodo obahwe ne nisisi boye na nasen na nemu ohaw na atete no ni nara wefiwo na abra wo adwumadi no Coastal Television nkatebaka oye Philip Mensa onye Dr. Francis Kumi ena onye Dr. Alexander TK Noel onye bonko bisew no enti se onya bandama ena no sunsuado no yebokwa na dat na wewie dat ekwadwuma no baye fo kra amobiara etuma ye bia na Dr. Alexander ana Dr. Francis Communion sama okani bi
okay na ire Ghana ye wazo yi yaza yi de ye wusu kofu wesu mu bebre so wo hyehyehye won pona ye kan ye hu bomi ye the technology a hu bebre ye zaba ye hu de obe mfaso de odbama ekwafa na za ye kan yi ne se otumi ye mfaso de otumi de bioja otumi so what 10 was the animal waste na dika ho was the biogas otum di mushroom ya nka no nke yeko abi ma ehule oho yetete won ye yebi ya yebutum ya yebi otum di ye bebre enama aho bebre nze project na am ye obo ye nwan de yehule nzema bebre awo ye farming system obotum ya 10 mo aye mfaso bi na mai as I can de aban wonso yen mommo dame mwe ofi broni no ogu na obobo aban so yen aban boyen na yenso yen hu beyenze ma yutum ya ye mo ye so a ye be se technology ye beyen aban so no mo ani ntum konkoma afiafo wono dodo on de bia na chere Bronyin is in an was ever. The Mabu, I go to me, I are able to me, yeah, lying to me and November, or by Busia. They also go to me, as a Jimmy Crafu when you are betting. The year you Crafu, Crafu, so Nimzia one, or boy, me too. Zaya is able to them. That's the ones who knowledge and I won't no. Also, Bobo, my answer, I answer a book. And so, ye na Ibuma, Bobo, more money be Ghana here, and so yes.
Eti ono kasa wie no na Dr. Alexander no so ode ochirem ko na obofodo na impo nchechira wode ma oye agriculture station officer wono so obegina do na woda kahwe ma ekwafo wode nda abefo technology wode abewie Dr. Francis Dr. Alexander no so nsama okene bi
Yo, mbocho medase. No, oji kan. Ekede abana na ochia yeka. University no. Ya lecture senior members ni na yedwuma na ye ne de. Ye introductory. Na ye pensem no waka no research no. Na ye ne apro, ye bo apro nso. Nti ye kan de am de na che de aban no nhihye de what employee na and offer you dwuma ma ye na mo ti de am na oni nim no osa wa ma ye facilities ana de bi etumetina as ye dwuma but nature no mo ti di ne de ye ko beyond that you rest in ankasa mo broni kan de IGF no another internal generated funds no ono no ama sikanche obakwa aba no back no we bi e de buan pension mu juma today pension ni bi kan no ye de value juma de o pension mu ye wo ye student kra university internally drake no or sponsor obo ama ye ma odimu pa no European Union and our sponsor this whole they can Ghana, Mozambique, South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and team lead in over Germany and Austria. And so Ghana and so Likagigi, and any community organization, our German for our Latin Ghana, and CSI, our corporate research, once we all from Isia Kumasi in a hand, University of Cape Coast. It's in another demo. Abang over there, Abantu Soyen Fe. Emma research na ye nia ye di demo pempensu yi awode etumi di etu anamonde oman na ono na etodi bi ana ya akechi kakra because aman sika no ayeden omba today ye tumi ni today ya ye divagri ye nya technologies bi ode obe business na ode obe juma ye hia de man kwankwe sika kashi ana ye hia aban uboni kan do on facilitate with the business environment. I want to create young business. My business plan. Internet demo kakrana ed advance kahoma na nche yenu agi. Debi aya work there. Ye demo technology si ya no akoka shells. Yes, ye mpedo ka shells. But ye ni enya demo insole yan fena obesum no ayi business na obeka shells. Nti ne dwumedi ni de ye be da BBAD. Na wehu na wetu akonkan amani chiwa no ye ode yin sika na yetu di investment today biogas no o ya abefu na nyama ncho obepoto obesai no ona yoda ye raw material no nti se yin sika kase di shemu a wa yi juma na mfaso abado enwu ha wazenetin na nche nyama na ye import pii no ne so aye de wa ati yamu not ye fa ye mushroom nyama nyama ya the same so we dey can biogas ye can biochar ni na edi etumi nya fertilizer wom nti fertilizer na nche ye di ye import pii ba no ye zina ya no ya be for the obani kan se ye nyama nka wa de opro nso ye zi ayi na che de ya tew inorganic fertilizer no ya tew do na che de ye koyi ni na your environment no so you put him no so or can chain ma otis here. Now they make a day CCR ben aware be was set up committee was set up National Research Council. A paper there one set and one tree so on for one one. Na yenya na akasa no yesikan kakrama on to sebe on DH. Today regional trade officer kan there 1 billion and a share particular sector the biogas 1 billion. Fashion, ya a business model, business plan. Now investors soon but some one boom non-com approach. Kakrama na ye no untu corner kase ma yenya faso there or man no today ye de yenya no. Ma ozikan divagri every pan the research no yani ekwafo yani wana watu asumi ani eye boom etu anamoni fienu otiechi yama media ye bibia ye boom yani aban na nkwani krofo yani agric extension for na ma won county na county anamon ye tuni esua bibia ye to see no ye ye tenetene no into researchers now war about my 1 year now crop when it can in silos and they were CSIR there were different components are we now obeying am I to my the researchers more into their art canon 1 year now barefoot no when I want can on found make come on no to do am I research no so far to me badu when it can there long term than how I
It's a UCC painful church where with the ma or ye agriculture and painful ono and ya question Dr. Alexander Wabonum in Chirominaro or Zama Hinkatibaka or ye Fripimensa and or the Menseminano or the Brahin. It was a young court and some food for one, some food for mono. Yes, sir, Afia Sierra na Abana. For fra will be sido or do you entertain to Tinumuna the wogood no guess was no do to this year. I was some or two or Mangani na Henam paying far Waroko why you jump Waroko Akayjuma with us on Managana washing one yeah well oh yeah soldier for one helicopter or cobo foam or boas no quado. Now brass some beno no query mean do nara what one abasa. Iri chanaju dem no si na yankai na wote helicopter ni mu parrot no leda na parrot na plane na helicopter na wa sai in some the p udu twetwe nya so na so nyoro kwatan nyoro batan yo je finfinin ono kita atantene amparampara ni nyampa empeinfo aya manzira mamre na wati oye report ni na those sitting na fitibra waya hobodo woboko na bra wuti fi oye kana sare wokudu da wokudu ina was reporting akama mampen John Dramani Mahama for you kwaja otode basam wo wie yin so wa bonsam chofu nhiem na wode dem nsem no without name Captain Fadwo na ocheche nsem na won krede kire nsanchofu de dem no si nti kwana wofado ma oye helicopter no obofom one nye biara na ode bombo na nye biara so na nyanda na oye parrot orada ana so de na wanse dara de wodadin odukobofo nemum iwim nalan na osesa yokusu ma hon ma na huhu na nyimanti wode kapeme ma ayewo semesi Captain Fadwo nsa wo cheche de bi.
Regulations are conducted to determine circumstances leading to the accident and prevention of future accidents and incidents. The final report, which was presented, came in a format which had 4 parts. Part 1, factual information. Part 2, analysis of the factual information. Part 3 were the conclusions, which includes the findings, the causes, and all contributory factors. And Part 4, the safety recommendations. composition of the board. This is now getting into the methodology of the investigation. The composition of the board had national security, Ghana Armed Forces personnel, personnel from the Aircraft Accident and Incident Investigation and Prevention Bureau, Ghana, National Intelligence Bureau, and we had some staff from the US Air Force also with us. For the factual information evidence collection, we immediately had, on the 26th of August, a briefing by the preliminary investigation team, PIT as it's called. Now, the preliminary investigation team was sent out, had, on the 26th of August, a briefing by the preliminary investigation team, PIT as it's called. Now, the preliminary investigation team were sent out on the same day of the accident by the Air Force. Their task was to go to the accident site, secure the site, try to protect and make sure that all perishable evidence was secure. Now, when we speak of perishable evidence, we mean things like information, things like memories, because people forget after a short time. They also have the duty of making sure that in as much as possible, they can capture and do a wreckage diagram of all the parts and so on. He handed over the PIT report. The flight recorder, made up of the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, which is typically called the black box, and some personal effects of the passengers. The team then started, having gotten this information, decided to proceed to the accident site to get first-hand knowledge of the accident site and to be able to interview witnesses and so on. We also went through a process of looking at all the maintenance records of the aircraft. We looked at the flight logs of the aircraft, we looked at the flight logs of the crew, we checked on the crew's qualification, we checked on documentation, just to be sure that everything was proper. The flight data and cockpit voice recorder were then transported to the AVIC Flight Decoding Center in Xi'an, China, from the 12th September to 22nd September 2025. Now, AVIC is the Aviation Industry Corporation of China. The aircraft is a Chinese aircraft. They were the manufacturers. They had the software and the hardware capable of decoding and giving us the data from the flight data recorder. So we had to go to them. We also decided, as is normal with investigations, to look at the human factors and operational information. We looked at the medical and psychological records of the flight crew. Interviews were conducted with pilots, engineers, superiors, to assess the crew's proficiency, training history, and operational culture. We also actually interviewed their families and so on. We left no stone unturned. We also interpreted the weather. We looked at the weather on the day. And we looked at the METAR, which is the actual weather at the aerodromes. We looked at the TAFs, which are the terminal aerodrome forecasts, eyewitness observations, and then we also took data from the Ghana Meteorological Agency. Next, the investigation team decided to look at the whole organizational and systemic processes under which the aircraft was operated. So we examined the Ghana Air Force policies, their flying orders, and their operational oversight mechanisms. We looked at crew authorizations. We looked at the air tasking order procedures. For instance, for the particular day, the task order that had been given was to fly the Minister of Defense and his party from Accra to Obuasi and back. We looked at Air Force oversight, its safety culture, and the adequacy of risk management systems. Having gotten all this factual information, we then moved to analysis and reconstruction. Using data from the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, radar tracks, and eyewitness accounts, the flight path was reconstructed. We also looked at various analysis of several data and other similar accidents. And then we pieced together the sequence of events leading to the accident. From that, we came up with our findings and causes, and then finally, the safety recommendations. So, for the scope of flight, we looked at the history of the flight, we looked at the weather, we looked at the environment, we looked at the machine, that's the helicopter, we looked at human factors, the crew flying the plane. Then we looked at the organizational and systemic factors, sequence of events, and then we came to what we believed strongly was the cause of the accident. For the history of flight, we went before the flight to see what the pilots had been doing. And it's on record that their last 3 flights before the subject flight, the same crew had flown all the 3 flights before on the same helicopter. On the 2nd of August, they came from their base in Takoradi to Accra. It was a Medivac flight, 1 hour long. On the 3rd of August, the following day, they did a flight from Accra to Cape Coast, back to Accra. 1 hour, 20 minutes. It was also a medical evacuation flight, Medivac. On the 4th, they were tasked to go fly Accra to Salman, back to Accra. That was a 2 hour 30 flight. That was a bullion flight, cargo flight. On the 5th of August, they rested. Now, it helps to say here that the Ghana Air Force, their flying limitations for the crew, you have 10 hours per week maximum, 62 hours maximum per month. Before flight, it's also accepted that if you've had a rest of 8 hours, you've had enough rest and you can go to work. They had in excess of 24 hours rest. On Wednesday, 6th August, the crew for the Z9 aircraft, call sign, ISCAP, Hotel Romeo, India, planned to execute the task order for the Ministry of Defense. The flight was scheduled to depart at 8 a.m. with an estimated en route time of 50 minutes. The captain delayed the flight due to adverse weather in Accra, Kumasi, and Obuasi. The weather improved about an hour later. So, takeoff ended up at 12 minutes, 14 seconds after 9 a.m. Throughout the flight, the altitude changed to avoid low clouds. Now let me explain why this was so. The flight started out being conducted under visual flight rules. Now, if you're flying under visual flight rules, what it means is you're using visual references to navigate. It's a normal way of flying. So they were using visual cues to navigate to go to Obuasi. And so they had to stay away from cloud in contact with the ground. So as the cloud base changed, they changed their altitude. Where they needed to avoid, they would avoid. I'd like you to take a look at these two pictures. Now, first of all, these pictures were taken in the environs of where the accident took place. Take note, it wasn't taken on the day of the accident, but it's just representative. The picture on the left shows the morning weather and shows you the visibility, gives you some idea of the visibility on the day. The picture on the right is taken from the same place, looking at the same area, and you can clearly see that you can make out the ridges in the terrain over there. And it's noteworthy that on the day of the flight, this visibility you are seeing that I'm telling you, you can't even see that as you can see. On the day, the visibility was much worse. From eyewitness accounts, the visibility was down to close to 200 meters at some point. This also shows a picture of actual weather from a passenger who was on board the aircraft, just to give you an idea. The weather in the southern Ghana was poor on the day, which delayed departure for about an hour. In Accra, conditions were misty, with visibility of about 5 to 7 kilometers and very low clouds starting at only 700 to 1,100 feet above the ground. While the situation improved slightly later in the morning, the early hours were dominated by haze and overcast skies. In Kumasi, the weather was worse, with drizzle reducing visibility to around 4 kilometers and heavy low clouds sitting just 600 to 900 feet above the ground. Only Accra and Kumasi Aerodrome were available. Only Accra and Kumasi Aerodrome weather were available. There was no formal information on the weather available to the pilots along the flight route. Witnesses.
Captain Fojo ono na wache chirum kwana ofado ma oyeri hwenhye no onya akwanhia eyinti wa meyenwu da oyewiem no bobie nara na ode da makwanhye no ode bai ebuso yenko wiedon ko kasebon wo oye NPP amanyeku hunatene na depena abasene kwan na enkano mbrehye bogoya na wo Tama West abatompo so de mami aren na toshe ado ode na probo bopem ofimfim antom ha na obehia oye delegate na ne ba obania ne tintin ne tete aye de mama delegate watase de aba wo kwakoto na weyi Franketofo wejina NPP amanyeku hunenyim sabi otafeche onya aba wo bakare ame maakobida ame maakobida nti ode wodemoko chenchena atwan debi ode wo hwede NPP amanyeku na nkasara wono ndeme bi wo wa wetwem wona afa na mpempenya so a wo mi NDC amanyeku a sesha yewomi mfa ne nte baba e kwakoto omampenjo jamani mahamo nkobi nti wodi mpofofo na wode ne baba nti ode NPP amanyeku so wo pia no solo wodi mpofofo sande dada no won ombo hun nti obehia am delegate wodi ho adwen besido na wato aba wodi ama honorable Ken akompra ko ejapana ori dehim papa sande NPP amanyeku ni na sisi a wode wa be wona asam wo ye buklongfo book fun won sha da mo MPP amanyeku ni nyana do titserempo omana Ghana enti mpempeyale MPP amanyeku wa fi businessman a sabe otafachi obu nkontai na nkontai na obubun odon faso papa odon baba ho na so ende wode omana Ghana shebin wonsa umunkontai papa bia eno ama ndama ya gangara enti wo pe showdown obi a obutum wegina na wa ma showdown papa mo omana Ghana afa ntampefura wo oye sikasam na mpuntum eyinti na atoshi ado ma me kishe delegate nsama odoto wonem ibin
ekuna ye ekono enye nkola ako enye gentle person ko enye asundwe hine ko eye showdown ko hello obi busa me say madam into be say ye kuna ye basabasa na me ka kire le say abrekuma ye call ye no ye ko bu mo de hie hawa ana ya mo hawa abumbu ni ye fu enu ntino enye saa kono na me hwa Dr. Bawumia betimi ye showdown fight. This fight is a showdown. Na me kase SSA di panokoko but SSA this surely pakro eso mu se ye hwe ba fani yamane to showdown and the tibi hwe sitting president ani and o se akufu ado ne Bawumia mudidi agro abema mu showdown bema bayi oba na ewo no 9 months and etimi akabida why in the history of the party why na unim no ya bema sa mimiano me do Dr. Bawumia ba me do party no esen na ye wini a wo benya ni post ye wini dia nyansa bia ye beka so wo bia no eye yoyi wache etimini hello Pacho Brofuna me ne mo kan mutie say baby ye duro no enye bia ye beka se o Kufuor time ye repeating no e Kufuor do time or comprehend no that era is over. So Obeka say you repeating it there and the NDC is already 8 years. Now I'm saying this is the new person here and the people no different now Obeka another for 12 years. 2042 grana woman. And if you check what is going on, if you want to win 2028, as I was the formula, no? You have to do something different to be able to win. You cannot go the same. And now be a country now say, oh, we call you no complain no. Kufuor kono no vice president. And Kufuor no kono no mayor bida. So what mayor bida near the whole kwa as soon as they are show. Because Bibia Abaka say, and I will can say, Sikana ya hata, who be the year is went to me and yet, and I just said, complain. Told be a young one, why you know, then you maybe see a bra now walk, and yet they can.
Ebusafo nyane mame arena toshi ado ono nensama depende odobo wa pro we finfimanto ha na yede abro no so na ebegina na yede donkre kasebo Coastal Television no mede baba ewie mfa seda sonko mu no mfa ma oye the sell gift shop no ye oye mesrahum the sell gift shop